In this video, I'd like to walk you through the process I use to create this digital drawing and animation. There are two separate components to this process. The first is Rgb Layer Drawing, and the second would be animation using EBSynth software. These two can be done independently from each other, but I did them both, so I'll walk through the process for both. It starts with choosing a video as a reference rather than a still image. So I chose this video, which I have linked below if you want to watch, and I isolated just a 2-second or so clip of it that I wanted to use just for my reference. So once I have that part isolated, and I also will reframe and crop the video size to match the resolution of the drawing I want to do. I want to do a vertical 3:4 aspect ratio drawing, and I want my canvas size to be 3000 by 4000 pixels. So I will make my video half of that each way, so 1500 by 2000, and it will be vertical, and I'll reframe my image inside there so it looks nice, and then export that as a video, and also export that as an image sequence, which is an important part of this process. It will actually give you a folder of each individual frame of the video as its own JPEG file. That's going to be important for later. And that's the extra part of the setup for this. And what you'll then do from that folder is pick out one of those frames as the still image you'll use as a reference for your drawing. And then from there, it's like any other drawing based on an image reference. So it's a little extra work in the beginning, but it's cool because having that image sequence based on a video gives you flexibility to do some cool stuff with animation after your drawing is done. The first step of the Rgb layer drawing process is going to be to bring your reference image into Photoshop. And our goal here is to create 3 different images of it that are just the RGB channels isolated individually. So you're going to have a red only, a green only, and a blue only version of this image. And to do that, you're going to need to use an adjustment layer, and we're going to use levels. And the levels drop-down tool within the menu gives us the option of isolating just the red, green, and blue channels individually. And so to create, for instance, the red channel, you want to take the green and blue channels and set them down all the way to 0. And then you'll have just the red by itself on that adjustment layer. And you'll repeat that two more times for creating the blue and the green versions by turning down the other ones that aren't the ones you want. And then that will give you 3 adjustment layers that you can turn on and off and export that as a JPEG. As a bonus step, I also created another adjustment layer using posterize. And the goal of this is to create a version of your image that is not a smooth gradation from light values to dark values, but instead breaks it up into individual steps of solid color. And this gives you an easier way to see where in the range your value needs to be, so you can more accurately ballpark if it's lighter or darker. This is as a drawing aid. I set my posterize to 5, which will give me the lightest value, the darkest value, one right in the middle, and then a 25% and 75%. And that's helpful to me because it's a really easy way to conceptualize value as these discrete steps. And I found this to be useful on really detailed areas like the microphone grill, which has the highlights and shadows like really close together. And so it's easy for me to just copy this version of the reference image and get my values really close just right off the bat. And then from there you can smooth out the rough edges and make a more accurate, smooth gradation. Now that we have our reference images created, we can open them in Procreate and drop them on a new canvas. On top of that, we can create 3 new layers. We can name them red, green, and blue because this is where we will be doing our 3 different drawings. We'll basically be creating 3 different new drawings of the same image. Each one is done with either red, green, or blue as our color, gradating to black, so it's kind of like a black and white drawing but with a color instead of white. And we'll be referencing the corresponding color that we created with our reference images for our values. Getting the right values in the right spot is critical for this because it's not just about light and dark, it's also about color. It feels unnatural to do this because, for instance, on the blue channel, the specific blue layers in this image are really washed out and bright, and so you're drawing this unnatural looking image. But in the end, it contributes to the accurate color you want. So getting the right values in the right spot is really important for getting an accurate color. I've done this in the past and didn't do so well, and it ends up being kind of washed out or kind of purplish or weirdly shifted in different ways, which maybe is the effect you want. And some of that is unavoidable, but for the most part I want it to be as accurate as I can get it, and then let any small imperfections just kind of add to the quality of the art itself. The fun part of this technique is doing 3 different art styles for each of these 3 layers. So as you can see, my red layer, I wanted to be as accurate as I could make it, and I chose a pencil and very fine detail. And then by the time I got to blue, which was the last drawing I did, it has a brush effect and it's a much larger brush, and it's a lot less accurate to how it needs to be. And once you have one layer that's really accurate, you can get away with having other layers that are less accurate without your image being too much of a mess. And having 3 different or distinct art styles overlapping, or 3 different brush effects, means when you combine them in the end, it has a more dramatic effect. In order to see your final full color image, you'll need to change the layer mode of your 3 drawings from normal to lighten. And when it's on a black background, those 3 layers will now add together to create the final full color look. And if you see this and you're not 100% happy with it, you can make touch-ups at this point and go into each individual layer with the corresponding color and add or subtract in a given spot to push the color towards the red or towards the green or towards the blue, make it lighter, make it darker. You can do a lot here. You can do the whole drawing like this if you wanted to, but I find it's easier to create 3 mostly complete layers first before I go in and do any full color touch-ups. But either way, once you're finished, you can then export this as a JPEG, and I also chose to export it as a Photoshop file so that I can edit each layer and export them as individual JPEGs. And this is a great step for my video animation process, which comes next. We should now have all the pieces we need for Rgb Synth to run the animation. There are 2 different ways to arrive at your final animation. The first is to use your full color drawing as the reference for Rgb Synth. The other way is to actually run Rgb Synth 3 different times using the individual channel as the reference for each one, and then combine them afterwards.